Welcome back to part 4 of the Churny Shamrock wall hanging quilt, and today we're going to be working on the stem block. Here are all the directions for the stem block. Go ahead and take a screenshot so that you'll have all the information handy.
Okay, now we're going to go ahead and make the stem block of our shamrock wall hanging. And the first thing we're going to do is we're going to take our background fabric and we are going to cut a square that is 10.5 inches. So to do that, I have a larger piece here and I'm just going to use my cutting mat and my ruler and cut off a piece that, is 10.5 that way, and then let's make it a square, and we're going to go 10.5 this way. Okay, and that's just a little scrap piece that I'll add to my pile. And then with this, we are going to cut it on the diagonal, and I'm going to get my big ruler out for this one so I can just get one straight cut. Okay, I'm going to line it up so that my edge of the ruler is in the corners, and I'm going to do one diagonal cut. Okay, so I have those two pieces, and then I need a green piece that measures 1 1/4 inches wide by 15 inches long. So I have a strip here, and I'm going to cut it 15 inches long, and I got a salvage on this end, so I'm going to trim that up. Okay, and then with my big ruler again, this is my straight side, I'm going to cut a strip that is 1 1/4 inches wide. And we'll save that with our scraps. So here's my strip. And essentially what I'm going to do is I'm going to be putting this strip in the middle of these two pieces as my stem unit. So in order to get that so that they come out, you know, in the spaces that they're supposed to be, this block is oversized and I will be able to trim it down. But how I'm going to do that is I'm going to take this and fold it tip to tip along this long diagonal seam and crease the halfway point. Okay, so I have a little crease there. I'm going to do the same thing on this side and make a crease there. And then I'm also going to crease the center of my long green piece, okay? And so then I can line up my center crease points so that I know that I have this strip extending into the corners as much as possible. Okay, I'm going to then turn this right sides together onto one side, line up my creases and stitch that 1/4 inch and open it up and then add the other side. So I'm going to go ahead to the sewing machine and start that right now. I have attached the green strip to one of the triangle units here, and I have pressed my seam in the direction so that it's underneath the green strip. And now I'm back at the cutting table and I'm going to line up my second piece with the crease marks and line those up again like such, just along that edge, right sides together, and I'll sew 1/4 inch along here and then go ahead and press that open, and we'll have a square with a green piece down the middle. Okay, now I have a large square that has a green long strip down the center, and that is going to be the stem of our shamrock. This is oversized and we do want to trim it down, and this block is going to be trimmed to 9 1/2 inches. So I have a ruler that is 9 1/2 inches and it has a diagonal line running through it, and I want to place it so that the diagonal line on the ruler is halfway in the middle of the green strip. Then I know when I trim it, my green strip is going to be exactly down the center. You can see that it's greatly oversized, so we have a little bit of wiggle room there. And I'm going to go ahead then, it's positioned where I want it, and I'm going to trim 2 sides, and we can discard those. And then I'm going to rotate my block, and now I can line up these 2 edges on my block, double check that I'm still centered where I want to be. That looks good. And then I'll complete the trimming of those 2 sides. And there's my block with my green stem going down the center. Now it is a little bit of a long stem, and I don't want my shamrock to have that long of a stem, so we're going to do one more step to complete our unit, and that is going to be where I'm taking a 5-inch square out of the background fabric, and I'm going to draw a line from corner to corner with my Frixion pen so that I can see it there. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to place this on the bottom part of my stem, and I'm going to stitch right on that line. And then what's going to happen when I fold this back is my stem is kind of floating then on this white background. It's not quite so long. And this is an optional step. If you like your stem longer, go ahead and leave it. But I'm going to go ahead and stitch right on that line, and then I'll be right back. Okay, I stitched right on that line, and I did press it just to make sure that it stayed square and was where I wanted it to be. And so now what I'm going to do is just trim off this excess. So I'm going to go put my ruler on here 1/4 inch away from that stitched line, and then I'll just cut those 2 little pieces off and add those to my scraps. And then I have a completed 9.5 inch square with our stem. We'll be ready to add these into our blocks, the rest of our blocks, and we'll start creating our shamrock wall hanging.
We are now ready to start assembling our quilt top. The last piece that we'll need to cut for this piecing puzzle is we will need 15 of the 5-inch background fabric cut into 5-inch squares. So 15 5-inch squares, and we can go ahead and start arranging and sewing together our actual quilt top. We will start with the layout that is shown here. Arrange your fabrics according to this and go ahead and sew those together. Okay, to complete this center row, we're going to use our stem block sewn to these 4 blocks that have been sewn into 1 block. So add those 2 together, and then we'll sew those onto the rows that we've just completed to make the full center section. Okay, this is the completed center section, and this measures 9.5 inches tall, and we'll save this one. We'll go on to completing the top section. We'll make a bottom section and then combine them all together. This will be our top section, and this is going to be sewn into 4 different rows, and add those 4 rows together. Make sure that your blocks are laid out in this configuration, and again, you may want to take a screenshot of this to refer back to make sure that you have everything laid out exactly how it should be. The last 2 rows here will be the bottom part of our Churny Shamrock quilt wall hanging. So make sure that everything's laid out in this configuration and go ahead and complete this section. And this is the final part. We will join the top section to the center section and then add the bottom section on to complete our wall hanging. The last thing we need to do is to cut 4 1.5 inch strips with the fabric of the background fabric and go ahead and sew 2 sides on, trim those off, add 2 pieces, one to the top, one to the bottom, trim that off. I like to do that small little border around there. It kind of locks all the seams in place, and then your binding kind of floats on that. Your binding won't cut off any of your little points in there, and it gives it a nice finished product. I hope you've enjoyed making the Churny Shamrock wall hanging quilt. It would also be really cute just to make the center section with the little shamrock and make that as maybe a little table topper that coordinates. Perfect for the St. Patrick's Day decorating. Stay tuned. I do have a few videos where I show how I spray base the quilt, and then a few videos where I'm going to be quilting on it, just to give you some ideas on how you can quilt your project. Thank you.